Hello, this is Bernie Wall. I'm an IELTS teacher and trainer specialising in working with students who need bands 7 and 8 in their IELTS exam. And this video is going to give you more information about tips and advice for your IELTS preparation. Often students come to me with some rules or some strategies that they have learnt from various places, and quite often these strategies are actually, rather than helping them, are in fact hindering them from getting good answers and getting a good score in their IELTS. So I like to call these IELTS myths. And so today in this video I want to look at 7 of these rules, if you like, that I have found amongst my students and that I feel are not really serving you in getting the score that you want in IELTS, and quite often they're stopping you from getting correct answers. So let's go through these 7 myths and hopefully you'll see why they are not helping you and you will not follow them. So as ever, I have a short presentation which I'll get up here. I just need to find the share. Okay. So here are the 7 rules that might not help you. You have to understand that there are no magic bullets, quick fixes, magic wands or panaceas with language learning. It's a bit of a slog. It's a skill. It's a high-level skill. It's one that we have all done because we've learnt our own language, but it took us a long time. It takes about 5 years to learn your own language, and that's before you learn to read and write. So it stands to reason that it's not going to happen overnight. Now, I know if you're looking at band 7 and 8, then clearly you already have a good command of English, but 7 and 8 requires some very high level functioning in language. And that means that your language has to be at a very high level and you have to perform at your best. And sometimes there are things that get in the way. And 7 rules here, or 7 things that I want to expose to you today, are things that could easily get in the way of your high-level performance and your ability to get a 7 or 8 in the parts of the exam that you need that. So if you realise that there is no quick fix and don't go looking for one, and just knuckle down and get on with the preparation and practice, then I think you'll manage it a lot better. So let's start with the first of these rules, and that is focusing on just one part of the IELTS at a time. It's true, it's surely true that what you focus on improves, and I'm sure many of you have had that experience where you've focused perhaps on the listening and suddenly you're getting band 7, 7.5, 8. However, that's all well and good, but there are 4 parts to the IELTS, and in order to have all of them at band 7, 7.5, 8, you need to focus on all of them. You have to keep all the balls in the air, because if you don't, what happens is you may go into the exam having spent 4 weeks on listening and find that the other scores are dropping. So it's really vital that if you need, especially if you're looking at 7777 or 8777, you must make sure that everything is practiced all the time. And the best way to do that is to have a good study plan and timetable. And on my website, IELTSLearningTips.com, you will find a study plan that I have created, which you're quite welcome to download and use if you don't have one of your own. So you can only really afford to focus on one part of the exam if your scores are already very high in the others. So if you are one of those IELTS students who's already getting 7.5 and 8s in reading, in listening, and in speaking, but your writing, for example, is still stuck at 6.5, which is quite a common scenario, then there is justification for just focusing on writing. But if you're not in that situation, then I think it's a dangerous thing to do. And it's quite high risk. So make sure that you practice everything. And even if you are only practicing your writing, it's still a good idea now and again to do some of the other things. Okay, a second bad thing to do is to memorize writing tasks. I don't think this is as common as it used to be, but certainly a little while ago, I know a lot of students who would find some really good writing tasks, perhaps somebody who'd already got band 7, and they would memorize these tasks. Examiners are trained to spot this, and they're really good at spotting it. And if you have memorized, even if you've memorized 1 or 2 whole sentences or a whole paragraph, they will see it. They're very highly trained. I used to be an examiner myself, so I know something about the training, and I know that this is something they're good at. Questions can be similar, often similar, but they're not necessarily exactly the same. So if you've memorized an essay to a question, a task 2, say, to a particular question, you might find that in the exam that question might look the same, but the focus will be slightly different. So your memorized answer will not fit. If you do have a good memory, and I know lots of people do, it's much better to use it to memorize vocabulary, to memorize different types of sentence structure, linking words, and other things that are going to help you to create your own writing task in the exam. And don't waste your time memorizing other people's work. Okay, here's another problem, and it happens in speaking. I've had quite a few students recently whose speaking, English speaking, was actually very, very good. Yet in the exam, they were getting things like 6, 6.5, when to my mind, they should have been getting 7, 7.5 at least. And one of the reasons is that the focus is going on vocabulary and grammar rather than on answering the question. So speaking is a test of communication. And of course, the more accurate you are, and the better your vocabulary and structure is, the higher the score you will get. But if you are focusing only on those things and you're not communicating well, then you may get marked down. Spontaneity is important. The examiner will not wait for 3 or 4 minutes for your answer. When the examiner has to wait for your answer, they are thinking, have you understood the question? Is there a problem with your listening? All kinds of things are going around in their head. So to be good at communication, you need to be spontaneous. If you're searching for a word or a phrase, it will cause you to hesitate. A lot of hesitation is a bad thing in IELTS speaking, and it will cause you to drop in your communication, which will cause you to get a lower score than you deserve. So the best thing to do is listen carefully, focus on the question, and think about the answer you want to give, and be spontaneous. And if you do this, you will find that the vocabulary and structures and everything you need will just come out automatically. And if the word you're searching for doesn't come, well, it doesn't matter, because searching for it won't help you. So focus always on the question and the answer you want to give, and not how you want to give it. It's the absolute opposite to writing. Writing, you need to focus on how, but in speaking, you need to focus on what. Okay. Another problem I've come across with students is using the listening time badly. And typically what happens is they are using the little time they have to look at the questions to look at the answers they gave in the last section. And this is not a good thing to do. Test setters know what they're doing. They know how much time to allow. And so the instructions are there to help you. They're put in to help you. Once the audio is finished from the last section, it's very, very difficult, even for a native speaker. It's very difficult to recall things. So it makes no sense to try and remember what you heard. It's far better to go on and go to the next section. The problem is if you spend a lot of time on the last section trying to remember, you're going to miss the next section, and then you're going to be always playing catch up. Make a few notes. If you're not absolutely certain of what you're hearing, write something down, you know, 1 or 2 words, so that later when you're transferring your answers, you may be able to remember what that answer should be. And if a word in your own language pops in, fine, write it in your own language. It doesn't matter. That doesn't go to the examiner. Follow the instructions you're given. This is the best way of dealing with the listening. If you don't, then you run the risk of missing 2 or 3 questions and getting completely lost. And believe you me, I've heard students tell me that that's what happened to them. They got completely lost and they lost half of one of the sections, and it's not worth it. Just keep moving forwards. Okay, this is in reading, and it's a very, very common misconception that the reading answers are always going to be in chronological order. Why would you think that? Because things can move around. So I don't understand this rule, frankly. Some do. If it's a table, if it's a flowchart, it will go step by step. And so, you know, each stage will follow the previous one. But for other questions, it may not necessarily be the case. So if you're also looking at the first question in a passage and you don't know anything about the reading passage, then it might be logical to start at the beginning. But generally speaking, if you've done 2 or 3 questions and you're now in paragraph 3, don't think that paragraph 1 and 2 are finished with, because that's a very dangerous belief. Learn how better to understand the text, analyze the questions, and then match the information. So if you've got a question, say, about a process, and that process is contained in the first paragraph, it's surely more logical to go to the first paragraph and analyze the process, rather than say, well, this is question 3, so it can't be in paragraph 1. These rules are too strict, and they stop you from finding often very simple answers. And I've noticed this before with many, many students, and they've struggled on a question, and I've said to them, well, why are you looking in that paragraph? And they said, because question 1 and 2 were in the first and second, so this must be in the third. No, not necessarily. And when I pointed them back to the first paragraph, the answer was really easy. So don't have these arbitrary rules. They don't help you. Okay, this is another one. Only read the first and last sentences in the paragraph. It's another thing that can really work against you, and I don't understand how it can help you particularly. I would say when you start your reading, skim through the opening paragraph, and then that gives you an overview, and then accept that the questions can point to any part of the text. Words like but and however, which often come in the middle of a paragraph, can turn the whole meaning on its head. And I'm going to show you an example of this in a minute. And that can send you completely down the wrong route. Improve your skimming and scanning and your speed of doing these things, and that would be time better spent than just reading the first and last paragraphs. So I would reject this rule completely and work on your skimming and scanning skills and practice them so that you can get faster at doing this. Okay, here's the example I mentioned. So this is a paragraph, and this is the first sentence: sea dumping incites widespread condemnation. So people using this rule would have read that and then jump to the bottom. purpose-built structures of steel or concrete have been employed, some the size of small apartment blocks, principally to increase fish harvests. Now, this is a headings exercise. I don't even understand that last sentence. I don't know how it relates to the first sentence. It doesn't make any sense to me. But if we are going with this method of first paragraph and last paragraph, and we look at the choices here, then I think we're going to go maybe for number 1, because that fits with that first sentence. We maybe might go for number 3, because this is talking about steel in the sea and about fish harvests. So we might go for number 3. And we might go for number 5, because it says incites widespread condemnation. The answer is actually number 4. Sea rubbish can be beneficial. Now, if you look at these two, you probably would not choose that heading. But if you skim through the whole paragraph, you'll see that this is all about dumping rubbish, which is a bad thing. But then there's this word, however. And however can often be quite an important word in a paragraph. So it tells us then that if we dump the right things, sea life can actually be enhanced. And then this now makes sense. The steel and the concrete starts to make sense. So by using that arbitrary rule, then we don't understand which of the headings fits the best, because actually sea rubbish can be beneficial is the correct heading. But this word was critical in understanding that. So for your headings, rather than pick first and last, skim it and find out what is it telling me. Okay, and the last one, keywords are brilliant. I think keywords are really important in reading. However, you can go too far. And if you're too rigid, you can overuse them and over-rely on them. And sometimes, especially when you get to passage 3, it's more than keywords that are required. So you might find it with the keywords, but then if it's not making sense, you need to use your common sense and step back a bit and look at it a little bit more with a longer view. So, do I need to paraphrase rather than use keywords? Do I need to look at the previous sentence or the next sentence, or do I need to just skim through the whole paragraph? So it's not just about matching one keyword against another. In the first passage, often that's the case. And in some questions, yes, that's the case, but not always. So don't be too rigid with your keywords. So, and then always, always keep going back to the question, because the question is where you will find the answer. So go back, is that what the question is asking me? And as ever, practice, 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 because without practice, you're not going to improve. So please avoid those 7 things. Be more open to the passage, to understanding how it works, how it's set up. There's an article on this with a little bit more information on my website, IELTSlearningtips.com. You can sign up there also for free resources and other information about the courses I run or how you can get help from me. And please, if you have friends or family who are trying also to get high bands in IELTS, then share this video with them or share my website address with them, because I want to help as many people as possible. So thank you for watching this, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye-bye.